When I made my last video, I made two assumptions about the Borderlands movie. First, that it would be a Guardians of the Galaxy knockoff road trip movie, and second, that it wouldn't go over well with true Borderlands fans. Regrettably, I was wrong about both. This movie won't just appall Borderlands fans, it will appall everyone, and I wish it was a Guardians of the Galaxy road trip movie because that sounds infinitely better than what we got. There are spoilers ahead, so if you care about the plot points of this movie, come back after you've seen it, although I promise there is nothing I can say that will ruin this movie for you because that implies there is something to be ruined. This movie fails spectacularly in every imaginable area. The actors, while competent, cashed their checks and checked out because every single one of them delivers a tepid, lifeless performance. The characters are basically the names and bodies of their video game counterparts grafted onto completely different people. Lilith is a jaded headache of a person who complains her way to massive personal gain.
God, I hate this plan.
Tina comes off like a regular kid doing her best Tina cosplay. You can't understand what Krieg is saying 90% of the time. Jack Black's Claptrap is a massive clap slap in the face to the version from the games, and they somehow manage to get the worst out of both Kevin Hart and Roland as a character, because Roland is given very few jokes throughout the film, which makes their casting choice that much more confounding. But even if Kevin Hart had been given more jokes, it's not like they would have landed. I was in the theater with about 5 other people, and there was not a half chuckle to be heard throughout the movie's entire runtime. The jokes in this thing are so flaccid and horrible that it becomes genuinely difficult to tell when they are being serious and when they are trying to be funny. Tonally, this movie feels more like a parody of a Borderlands movie than a genuine attempt to make something good. The emotional moments feel like jokes, and the jokes are impossible to laugh at, so you're left in this constant limbo of not knowing what the movie is intending with their tone. For example, about 90% through the movie, General Knox, who is similar to their in-game counterpart in name only, decides to inexplicably switch sides and help the heroes, only to be instantly vaporized by an Atlas turret seconds later. I could see that moment working as a joke, but because the movie is so horrible at communicating when it is trying to be funny, I genuinely don't know if they were going for a joke or a plot twist. Speaking of plot, this thing would barely qualify for a main quest in a Borderlands game in terms of complexity. The plot is basically a hunt for the Vault Key, which they find with pretty much no effort or resistance. For example, there is a Vault Key piece in a giant abandoned doll warehouse filled with thousands of boxes, and Lilith finds it in literally the first box she opens about 90 seconds into their search. They later try to play that off like Lilith's siren powers helped her sense it, but it feels like a massive plot convenience to save time in a movie that really doesn't need to, considering its mercifully short runtime of 1 hour and 40 minutes. The plot is also filled with countless holes and lapses in logic. For example, Lilith goes to Pandora to kidnap Tiny Tina for the head of Atlas, and Tina attempts to kill Lilith when they first meet with her Badonkadonk. Remember that from the games, guys? Wow, I feel so catered to. However, once Atlas finds their location and starts trying to capture Tina, Lilith flips on a dime and teams up with Tina, and her motivations are not questioned again until near the end of the movie. At the bare minimum, you'd expect a Borderlands movie to at least have some good action and gunfights, but like I said, this movie drops the ball in literally every aspect. The gunfights are shot like fistfights, with a nauseating number of cuts to ensure that you never get a great look at what is clearly awful fight choreography. Most fights amount to the gang of misfits being chased by a horde of something, whether it be Atlas vehicles or bandits, and the gang turning around to blindly fire their weapons into the horde with seemingly random results. The best action in it are the fistfights with Krieg, but even those are shot so poorly that you never really get to see him do anything cool. The movie also looks awful, which is something I did not expect. Don't get me wrong, I wasn't thinking this was going to look like Dune or anything, but I also didn't think it would look like the costume department had an exclusive deal with Party City. Everything visual in this movie, from the stunt work to the props to the costumes to the sets, feels incredibly artificial. I think the only time I actually laughed throughout the entire movie was when Lilith used her Firehawk powers for the first time, and the way she awkwardly floats into the air looked like when SpongeBob is dangling from the ceiling after the Goofy Goober song. The best way I could sum this thing up visually is that it feels like a Nickelodeon direct-to-TV movie, which is embarrassing for a $100 million production. To close here, I want to talk about how badly this movie handles the Borderlands source material, which is no surprise. I mean, if the games can't even honor their roots, why should we expect the movie to do so? Firstly, there's no time spent on the guns in this thing. Everyone in the gang uses the most generic weapons you can imagine, except Lilith, who uses an infinity pistol, which I'm convinced they included so they could excuse the fact that she never has to reload during the action scenes, but then again, neither does anyone else. Tina has a rocket launcher that she never uses once, and Roland has an AR that looks more like a Nerf gun than something from the Borderlands series of games. You know, the ones known for their unique weapons. They even go to cool in-game locations like Caustic Caverns, but don't lean into anything that makes those places interesting. Caustic Caverns is not the massive underground cave we see in Borderlands 2, but rather a sewer system with a corrosive river running through it. No crystalisks, no nothing. In general, the creatures of Pandora also barely make an appearance. They show Skags and Rax a few times, but they don't factor into the story at any point. The only creature that even moves the needle is the Thresher, but like all obstacles in this movie, they overcome it in about 30 seconds. Overall, the Borderlands movie is an affront to cinema as an art form, and it marks the most recent cliff that the Borderlands franchise has decided to fall off as it tumbles further towards the abyss. Anyway, on a more positive note, I have some fun stuff in the works that's more gameplay oriented, so if that sounds cool to you, consider subscribing. Thank you all so much for the support as of late, and I will see you next time.